Hey guys, it's Shelby and it's great to see you back on my channel. Today I have for you guys a mini wrap up, and I decided I'm going to format my wrap ups like this instead, so that instead of waiting a while and I've forgotten how I felt or what I thought about the books, I would just wrap up after a couple or maybe 3 books. That way I can give a more accurate review of what my thoughts were as I was reading it. So that's what I have for you today. Today I have for you 4 books, or 4 works. One is an audiobook, one is very short, it's a Monster Calls, and then 2 of them are just little collections. So I figured 4 is a pretty decent number to do in a mini wrap up. But yeah, so let's start with Game of Thrones. You guys know, I've talked about it in plenty of my videos already, that I read, or rather listened to, Game of Thrones on audiobook, and I absolutely loved it. So now is the time where I can properly review and tell you what I thought and tell you what it's about, so that maybe you want to listen to it or read it. I'm just going to tell you right now that this review has no spoilers. I really encourage you guys to read all of these because I love them so much, so I'm going to keep them spoiler free so I don't spoil you at all for anything. So if you don't know, A Game of Thrones is written by George R.R. Martin. The first book is called A Game of Thrones and the series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. The audiobook that I listened to was narrated by Roy Dotrice, and I can't remember how many hours it is, but it was pretty decently long. Game of Thrones is a high fantasy set in a place where summers can span decades and winters can be lifetimes. Within the book, you see the story pan out through many different perspectives of characters. So Game of Thrones is told in character chapters, and you get to see the story told through 8 different character perspectives. And it's told in a limited omniscient point of view. I think that's what it's called. You see everything that's happening through their perspective, but only how the character knows what's going on around them. So what I really like about that is not only does it help you distinguish what character you're seeing the story from, it also kind of helps you learn a little bit more about the character themselves. So who are the characters that tell the story? You have 1 Snow, 5 Starks, 1 Lannister, and 1 Targaryen. That's Jon, Bran, Catelyn, Arya, Eddard, and Sansa for the Starks, Tyrion Lannister, and Daenerys Targaryen. What I thought was really interesting though about them being told in character chapters was that the division of the different characters having a certain amount of chapters wasn't even. So Ned Stark, or Eddard Stark, got the most chapters. He got 15 chapters. Catelyn got 11. Dany, or Daenerys, got 10. Tyrion got 9. Jon also got 9. Bran got 7. Sansa got 6. Arya just 5, and there's 1 more character that gets just the prologue, which is Will, but aside from the prologue, he doesn't get any other chapters. So what does this mean? It means that you get a lot of the story through Ned's eyes, and with that you're going to see a lot of the themes that go along with his character. You could say that Ned Stark, or Eddard Stark, is a man of honor and duty, and you see a lot of those themes within the book. More themes that you see are sacrifices and things that you do for love. But what I really would have loved to see was more chapters from Arya. Arya is just one of the younger Starks. There are 4 Stark children and 1 Snow. So Jon Snow, he's given the name Snow because he's a bastard son. And then we have Sansa and Arya, which are the girls. Sansa's older, Arya's a little younger. And then we have Bran and Rickon, and Bran is the older of the 2. But we don't see the story through Rickon's eyes because he's just a little toddler baby. But you see a lot of how Ned interacts with his kids in this story, and also how Catelyn, who's his wife, interacts with them. 2 of my favorite characters, if I can say, are Arya Stark and Tyrion Lannister. I thought it was really interesting that they both have in common that they don't really fit in with their families and they don't really fit in with society. Arya because she's a little bit more tomboyish and she's not ladylike, and Tyrion because he's an imp, or what they call an imp. He's a little person, so he can tell that his father doesn't love him as much as he does love Jaime, his other brother, and it's just kind of heart-wrenching, but also at the same time you're rooting for the underdog, and Tyrion is just so witty and clever, and I love him. What they differ in is that obviously Tyrion's older and Arya's way younger. So you can see the difference in experience. Tyrion is obviously known as wise and clever, but that probably has a lot to do with the fact that he's lived more of his life already. The story takes place in Westeros and the Eastern Continent, with the Dothraki in the Eastern Continent. I don't know what the Eastern Continent is called. I don't know if they actually said it, but in Westeros is the home of the Seven Kingdoms, and there's this huge wall, and north of the wall is like almost like uncharted territory. They call it like the wildlings live north of the wall. That is where the Knights Guard or the Guards Watch or the... Holy shit, how do I forget? How am I forgetting this right now? Whatever, that's where Jon Snow goes and he like guards watch. What I really love though is that George R.R. Martin goes super deep into the history and the culture of the different houses. He creates like houses for these families that these families are raised in, and he goes as far as even creating crests and mottos and like cool words and things like that. But it just creates this like phenomenal level of world building that you don't really get in a lot of books, and I really appreciated that. Ending the book was kind of, it leaves you on a cliffhanger. Obviously they want you to read the second book, which I definitely will. I think this time I will grab A Clash of Kings, which is the second book. I'm going to pick up the physical copy and see what it's like to actually read it instead of listen to it, although Roy Dotrice did an amazing job at creating the voices and making such a beautiful world in my head. But I think I might try out the real book this time. But regardless, I gave Game of Thrones a 5 out of 5. I love it. I'm in love with it. I will review the rest of the series when I get around to it, but I really loved it. Alright, on to the next book I have for you, which is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and it's a story by Simon Dowd, and it is illustrated by Jim Kay. I've got to commend Jim Kay because he does an amazing job at illustrating. The pictures in here are absolutely stunning. They're all black and white, but still, like, I don't know if you can see it. Regardless, if they're black and white, it fits the story perfectly. This book follows a young boy named Connor. He is in high school, I believe, and he's going through a very rough time in his life. And then one day a monster calls his name while he's asleep, and he thinks it's his nightmare that he normally has, which is a terrifying nightmare with screaming and the wind rushing, and they don't tell you what the nightmare is until the very end. But a monster comes, and throughout the story, the monster tells Connor 3 stories, and then at the end, Connor has to tell the monster a story, which is the truth. All the monster wants is the truth. Connor is very reluctant to tell the actual truth because he's going through such a hard time. It's almost like he doesn't want to face the truth. I didn't realize it, but when I closed the book, I was actually crying. It's heart-wrenching and beautiful, and you can feel the confusion and the anger and the pain and just every emotion that Connor goes through, you go through while reading it. Another thing that I really love is that there's a theme in here about stories and how they can become alive and chaotic, and if you let them, they can ruin your life, basically. And that is something as a reader that I very much appreciated. I know that on here on BookTube, or even if you're not on BookTube but you're a reader, you understand that stories do really mean a lot, and you'll see in a story what you see in yourself or what you have in yourself. And so having the monster explicitly say a few times that stories can be alive, it was just refreshing, and I really enjoyed that aspect. There was not one moment in here where I felt that the story was flat. I loved every second, and I recommend this to everyone. It's very short. That's why I was able to read so much in this past few weeks, and it was just phenomenal. I gave it a 5 out of 5. And the last 2 books that I have for you are collections, like I said. This one is Hint Fiction, and this one is Milk and Honey, which I will leave for the end because I know everyone talks about this one, and it's a beautiful book. But I want to talk about this one first. So this is Hint Fiction it's a collection of really short stories. Let me read you the definition of what hint fiction is. It's right here, in fact. So, Hint Fiction, a story of 25 words or fewer that suggest a larger, more complex story. This was the first book of its kind that I've read and picked up, and I actually grabbed it because I was taking a creative writing class and it was one of the recommended books. I read it in one sitting. It's obviously incredibly short, and each story is only 25 words or fewer, so it took me maybe like an hour or two to get through this entire thing. I want to read a few of them so that you guys can kind of get the feel of what hidden fiction is like. This one is called Donor by J.A. Conrath. Miller watched from his hospital bed as the brakes on his son's Indy racer failed. When they pulled his lifeless body from the wreck, Miller smiled. I stopped on that page and I was like, whoa, I need to know more. It's kind of like just so gripping and it grabs you. But that's an example of one, and it's 25 words or fewer, and it suggests a much, much larger story. I'll read one more. So this one is called Cull by L.R. Bonehill. There had been rumors from the north for months. None of us believed it until one night we started to kill our children too. How creepy is that? And it definitely makes your mind wonder what the actual hell, because why are people killing their children? These little tiny stories can create such crazy scenarios in your mind, and I loved it. I closed the book and I was definitely inspired to create my own hidden fiction. And lastly, I have Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. This is a collection where you understand poetry. You're like, whoa, these words put together speak to my soul. They're not just a bunch of words on a page that look pretty. They really dig deep and they get at you. My new friend Livy on BookTube made an amazing review of this collection, so I highly suggest you go and check her out. I'm gonna link her video in the cards above. In her video, she says, is a general consensus that if you're a young woman, you should definitely pick this up. I'm going to further that and say if you're a human being who can read, I suggest that you pick this up because it is so phenomenal. I am going to let you check out her channel because she's new to BookTube, and I want you to go and send her some love. She creates a beautiful review of it. I just want to share two poems with you that she did not share in her video, so you get a little bit more of a view of what the book is like. So yeah, so the first one that I'm going to share with you is this one. It's on page 89. The next time you have your coffee black, you'll taste the bitter state he left you in. It will make you weep, but you will never stop drinking. You'd rather have the darkest parts of him than have nothing. This is in the section of the breaking. So it's split into 4 parts. The hurting, the loving, the breaking, and the healing. Liv mentions that her favorite part is the healing, and I can definitely agree. It is so incredibly empowering, but she'll talk more about that in her video. I'm just going to read one more. It's super tiny. It's this one, and it's on page 148. It's in the section The Healing. It's one of the very first ones that she introduced you to. The thing about writing is, I can't tell if it's healing or destroying me. For some reason, I just really connected with this one because when I am writing, or when I'm trying to get through something that's really tough and I'm writing about it, there's something cathartic about it, but also you are forced to revisit that time, so it can be very painful, but at the same time you know you're trying to better yourself. It's a good example of a shorter work that she does that also has a lot of impact. Also, as Liv mentions in her video, there are illustrations in this and they are done by Ruby herself. But I just say that if you want to get into poetry, or if you love poetry, or if you're a human that loves books, you need to pick up this one. Aside from it being incredibly beautiful, the inside is beautiful as well, and it will stay with you for a very, 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 very long time. So that is it, guys. Those are the few books that I have for you today. Let me know what you guys think, if you guys have read any of these, if you plan on reading them, what you like about the format of this video, but primarily if you've read these books, I want to know what you guys think about them, if you guys agree with my ratings or my reviews, what you liked, didn't like about the books. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye.